What is kiteboarding? Well, it's a sport that combines three things that have been around for eternity: kites, boards, and adventurous weirdos. And it's brought them all together to make one really badass sport. We're in Hood River, Oregon, a small town on the Columbia River. It's perfect. What'd you do wrong that you don't live there? You've made mistakes. And the wind is always blowing, which is one really good reason why it's our nation's capital for kiteboarding. Hey, Owen, Spencer. Owen Rauscher spends his office days in a wetsuit. Got a little bit of scruffy facial hair, real laid back kind of Northwestern bro demeanor. Owen's office is nothing more than an 8x8 hut with a little deck built onto it with all his gear inside. Doesn't need to be much more. It's not his real office. His real office is in the river. He's a kiteboarding instructor.
All right, Spencer, what we're gonna start with here is the 3 different ways that a kite makes power.
There is a classroom portion to this. It's mercifully brief because most of what you're going to be doing in learning how the kite works is actually handling the kite itself. This is not a toy, okay? It is a sail, capable of pulling you or anyone attached to it 20 or 30 feet in the air. It's terrifying. And guess what? It's attached to you.
So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and get geared up, and then we'll go out and hit the water.
Okay. Let me be really honest. Before we started any of this, I didn't understand why anyone would ever want to do any kind of water sports. I don't like getting wet. It gets cold out there. You subject yourselves to the whims of Mother Nature, only to be thrown face first into water that's full of like fish, like real fish. So we walked down to the beach, and to my surprise, it's not isolated. It's the middle of Hood River, Oregon. There's people walking their dogs, a couple of people paddleboarding, and there are kites. People everywhere, out because the wind is up and because that's when you have to kiteboard. And that's where I'm going to tie a kite to myself and see what happens. It's far more powerful than you can imagine. Far more powerful. And you have to work with it. Owen takes the kite and then does the thing I really don't want him to do, which is hooks it to me and then lets go.
Here, let's go ahead and get your vest buckled here.
Thank you.
All right, there you go.
Woo! I'm pretty sure I can fly a kite. Taking that and transitioning it to blazing kiteboarder shredding on the Columbia River, that's a process I don't understand.
All right, Spencer, looks like you're about ready for a body drag.
Oh, you sure about that?
Oh yeah, time to get in the drink.
I go out into deeper water for the first time to work on the body drag. It's an important and basic skill in kiteboarding that teaches you how to learn to work with the kite while sitting in the water. Just as I'm starting to figure out how to get this kite to pull me through the water, the wind dies. So without any wind, we thought we would go enjoy another harmonious, quiet, natural, and organic marriage of man and machine. We went and got jet skis. This is a lifestyle that creeps up on you, correct?
Oh yeah. I mean, once you've done this, it's hard to get back in the office.
And as you're moving at high speed across the water, you perform the mental experiment of taking out the engine noise and imagining yourself on a kiteboard. You think, who invented kiteboarding?
Hey, Corey.
Yeah. How's it going, dude?
Kiteboarding was started by an engineer who was around 40 years old and his son who was 14. That son was Corey Raisler.
How?
Why? Like what was the first thought?
My dad's an inventor. He was a Boeing engineer, and he had this passion for sailing that was more theoretical. And hey, Corey, why don't you try this?
Picture sending your 14-year-old son out on a surfboard tied to a kite that you were testing and weren't really quite sure how you were going to stop. Picture him floating out to sea.
The changing point was off of Port Townsend, sailing out in the Straits of Juan de Fuca on 2 old water skis and a stack of A-frame kites. 2 handles, no harness. It worked. I'm planing for 10 or 20 seconds going, wow. And then I went down and the rip took me out half a mile offshore, like faster than you can swim. Some drunk sailors pulled me into a sailboat and my rig, and nothing was lost.
Another important lesson, always have drunk sailors on hand, right? These are people who surf and they like being outside and they like to try new things, even if those new things don't make a whole lot of sense, even if those new things look patently irrational. But then, as quickly as it died, the wind picks back up. So we head back out. And finally, around sunset, something beautiful does happen. I get pulled. It may look like I'm drowning, but this is a big deal. I'm body dragging successfully, and that gets me one step closer to actually kiteboarding. We get to Owen's shack the next morning, and he's on the phone, tapped into the kiteboarding underground. That's the collection of buddies who are monitoring the wind speeds, direction, and conditions that might be irrelevant to everyone else, but to a kiteboarder are the lifeblood of the sport. The wind is moved, so we have to move. Where we're going isn't exactly straightforward. Down a road, down a little more road, over a bridge, then over a couple of guardrails and down through some woods, and there it is. It's a perfect beach on a perfect stretch of river with a perfect bit of wind roaring overhead. That's where I'm gonna try to kiteboard.
We're gonna try to put like all of these things together all at once.
Yeah, it's kind of like a dance. I've been helping you out with the moves, but now you're gonna need to synchronize your actions and, you know, be a prima ballerina.
Yeah, and how long does it take to become a ballerina? It's like years, and this is what, day 2?
We wade out into the river, which is really wide at this point, but is shallow in the middle, which is where we'll be working. Owen puts the board on my feet, and this is where we try to get me from floating in the water to floating on top of the water. I can't explain to you the blind terror of losing control of the kite and being pulled by something that usually you're just toying with at ground level. At 30, 40, or 50 feet up, it's a machine, and you're not ready for it. This is real power, it's scary. People died doing this. There's so many things going on at once. You're thinking way too much about it. And that's one way to fail, but there's another way to fail too. It's when you start to get tired. You finally get your brain out of the way, but your body's not in gear. There's one moment when I am almost up, when everything is almost working, when I'm in a straight line and the wind is pulling me out of the water and I can actually feel everything kind of rising. My brain says, you're gonna go up, you're gonna kiteboard, it's gonna happen. And that's when you crash.
All right, get me out of this shit. We have to have a conversation that's difficult for men to have, but I think it's important. I didn't get it up.
On average, people get riding between the 3rd and 5th lesson. I wish I had lessons. I got kind of the buddy lesson. He put my feet in the board with entirely too large a kite, and I literally went flying.
It is like the most technical, finicky, little finessey thing I have ever tried. It's also hands down the most beautiful. I don't know anybody who could come out here and go, yeah, I don't at least want to try that.
I get it though, I do. Apparently you need about 8 to 10 hours of instruction just to get up in kiteboarding. At least 3 lessons, that's what Owen said. And I felt like I was a little bit ahead of the curve for once, which is a rarity. But this feels like something incomplete, but not in a bad way. It feels like a book I got like 300 or 400 pages into, where there's another 300 or 400 pages to go. I get why the people doing it out on the river have these gigantic smiles in their faces, because it is pretty exhilarating just to watch, and if you get a hint of it, it's enough to make you want to go back for more.